it's such an interesting thing to talk about a show that's been adapted from elsewhere, but it feels like so much its own thing. The Canadian version has it feels Canadian. It's a wonderful thing. What's it like going into the what was it like going into the fifth season?
For me, even after, so this is my fifth season on the show, even after the fifth season, it's still magical. I feel it's like a dream. When I take my first step into the set, I still look around. I'm like, this is such a unique experience. It's like I feel blessed every year. Some other people might take it like just a job or another seasons. For me, the moment I set foot on set, it's still such a unique experience.
Would you say that, seeing these amateur bakers come in, do you think that there's a time frame where they kind of have to get up to speed, or what is that initial experience like for them coming into the tent?
For them, probably the first day it's still a shock because it's a huge space. It might look small on camera, but it's huge. And just to see the the cameras, the lighting, the sound people, there is probably 80 people working on set. So you don't see them watching TV, but it creates a lot of movement. So it's probably head spinning for the first day at least. And then of course it's always about the weather. Is it cold? Is it hot? And that have a huge influence on the state of mind. We do shoot long days, so to keep the energy through the day, it's very difficult. So, my blessing and all my respect to every baker who come on the show, because I know it's not easy. It's a very tough job.
What's your favorite part of doing the show? Is there one aspect in particular that stands out for you?
It's probably discovering the baker's story, where they come from, how they came into loving baking or pastry. Definitely when they bring unique spices or spin on any classic desserts. If you look at the food scene in Canada for the last 30 years, I remember the first time I came to Vancouver was 30 years ago. It was strictly only about, Nanaimo bar, maple syrup, quite narrow, still good, but very narrow. And now you just walk into any food store aisle. I mean, even Safeway, they have an aisle for specific product from the Philippines, India, China. So it's a very complex, very rich, very interesting food scene in Canada today. And I'm glad to be here. Other places is still quite narrow-minded. Here, it's really open to the world, and it's such an excitement. And it's for me, it's all about discovering.
As a French chef, I'm really curious for you. What do you see in these bakers? Do you think they have enough experience in French cooking these days? Has it improved over the years? How is it changing?
French cooking or baking, it's very important, but it's not everything. And that's the key. If I was coming as a French chef or French trained chef and only looking at things through that optic, I think it will be very narrow-minded. So it is important, but it's not everything. Today there is great bakes from, I'm learning a lot about Chinese baking, and which is very interesting. The whole chemistry is different. So I think it's not to look at it through a French optic. French techniques are important for sure. There is a huge contribution for French, food in the world, but let's not forget the Dutch, the Italians, the Philippines have great bakes. So, it's not only about French pastry, and even more today and in Canada. But for me, it's, there is a lot of French technique used on everyday cooking, baking, bread. And whoever takes the time to learn it, kudos to them, because it's not easy. I spent years of training for French technique under French rules, under French, and I know it's not easy. So when I see a baker taking the time, taking the energy, and, doing that repetitive work again and again until it works, I'm like, wow, all my respect for them, because I do it as a professional and it's not easy. And, like macarons, it's simple. It's a few ingredients, but it's extremely difficult to make it all the time and be consistent. And to be honest, I don't see much bad macarons on the show for the last 5 seasons. Most of the macarons are quite good. I'm like, wow, and as a professional baker, I know it's not easy to make. So that's probably an example where, people have done their homework, people train, people bake every weekend at home before they even apply on the show. And to look at the skills level, it's impressive.
It is amazing to see the work that comes out of the show, because I cook all the time, but I know that there's nothing I could do that would even match any of these their work.
And and the worst is not only to do it, it's just to do it under a specific amount of time and a lot of pressure. And sometimes I look at it, I'm like, oh my God, they made it, they did it. I mean, look at the technicals challenge, which are usually quite difficult. They do it. They are, nobody fell. I think our biggest concern is to be sure everybody's set for success. We want them to finish it. We want them. It's not a show where, as a judge, you'd be thrilled to see somebody failing. I don't think that's a kind of show. So we want to see them finishing it. And then, it's all about tasting texture. Is it baked properly? But we will not be thrilled to see a baker, totally having a breakdown. I think that's not part of the show.
For you this season, was there a particular recipe that you thought was really interesting to see them, take it on, and that maybe had interesting results?
There will be one in a specific episode that I was like, my God, this is amazing. Like we had in the past seasons as well. But without any details, there have been more than one, but there is definitely one where you can see my face. I'm like, I cannot believe you can achieve such a thing. And the baker did it.
How does the process go, in terms of picking these recipes that they're going to take on? How long does that take?
A few months. It's like we do. I always keep a file with ideas, stuff that come across. Something I like, something I've done in my kitchen. We look at trends too, what people love to get into. And then, we send it to a big folder, Kyla, I love our people. And then we do 2 batches. What do you think? What do you think? And this back and forth. So there is, then we go over the past. We want to be sure we don't repeat the same stuff. And then, we look at, should we explore that area? Should we see this? An example is vegan. Could we make a good dessert? Because it has to be visually exciting. It has to be exciting through the process too. We want the viewer to be captivated by it. And then the response, do people care about the stuff? So, we start with a huge batch of ideas, recipes, from the Middle East, for that matter. I think it's becoming, Syrian desserts, Middle East desserts are becoming important. And we always throw it to say, what do you think? Should we see something, because we've seen Syrian cookbooks that are very exciting. And, some people say, I think there is more to Italian desserts we can look at. So it's a lot of research, a lot of work. And, at the end, we look at the grid and say, yeah, that's it. That's a good grid for this year. And, so it's an exciting process.
Well, the last thing I'd like to know is, there's a lot of home cooks obviously watching this and getting inspired. Do you think there's something in particular you hope that they learn or take away from watching the show?
That baking is not that complicated. Or that baking, you don't need to make it complicated to have a good dessert or a good cake. Sometimes the most simple recipes are the best. I think baking brings people together. We've seen it through COVID, where people spend more time in the kitchen. I think the last 15 years, the focus point in the family home became the living room, in front of the big TV. I think COVID teaches us that we can gravitate back to the kitchen and spend time together. And there is nothing like spending a Sunday afternoon during the fall or winter baking pies together that, brings the family together and create amazing memories. And that's a key about baking. And I think the show reminds people that, those are not distant memories. We can recreate it again, and it's not that difficult.
Actually, I will ask you one more thing, because I know that you're involved with basically, a group about anxiety. I'm curious how you think baking and food relates to anxiety. Is there something there, or are they kind of separate topics?
No, it does. It does. There is something there for sure. I mean, in England, they do prescribe people with mental challenges. They do prescribe cooking class to help them focus. And I've done a program with Coast Mental Health in Vancouver, where we help young adults off drug and alcohol program to really turn things around and learn basic cooking skills. And and I always say cooking skills or baking skills are not just skills. It's skills first to have a job. I mean, once you know how to cook simple stuff, you can get a job in a cafeteria, in a hospital, in school. But also it teaches you to feed yourself properly. It keeps you occupied, and then it creates social time together. I mean, you can buy for $5, you can make a great potato leek soup and invite your neighbors, invite your family. So you kind of create connection again. And that's crucial for people who have mental challenges. And my work with Anxiety Canada, I use my own experience with challenges, but also we raise money, we raise awareness, and we try to move away from the stigma. I mean, nobody wants to say, do I have problem in life with my mental health? And I'm like, I use my own testimony with my struggle in life. And I'm like, look, I struggle every day. I do it. It just takes me twice the time, twice the energy to achieve it, but it's possible. And I think food helps you to really focus and take the time. And, and it helps your mind to pinpoint your attention to details on the recipe. So I think it does help. We have great success in Canada. And, my work with Anxiety Canada, it's almost every week I have a meeting or a phone call. What should we do? And, the main goal with that organization is to make mental health in Canada free and accessible for everyone, not to make it pay $250 or $300 for therapy. Make it free, mental health is very important. But baking and cooking definitely helps a lot, by my own experience.
Well, thank you so much for the time. Really a complete pleasure. I love the show. It's great seeing the new season.
Mm-hmm.
All the best.
Thank you for having me. Thank you for having me, and have a wonderful day.
Thank you. You too.